Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Stingray from the Manifesting Lab, bringing you this quite leading edge kind of subject today. The subject of how to live forever. And I really do mean that, how to live forever. Now, hopefully, you're going to get something out of this webinar. This webinar is kind of a little bit of a test because it is absolutely right on what I consider to be the leading edge of just about everything that is possible to be on the edge of. And if you can understand the concepts in today's webinar and they make sense to you and you can actually implement them, wow, your life is going to change from this webinar onwards. But before we jump into all that, I have a question for you. Since you've come to this webinar, presumably because you're interested in living forever, I want to ask you a question. Why do you want to live forever? So if you would like to present me with an answer, I shall be quite interested. Because, we assume everyone wants to live forever. Or maybe nobody here wants to. They're just here because they have nothing else to do. Would anyone like to say why they want to live forever if they do? Or if you don't, just say you don't, and we can end this webinar pretty quickly. And I won't read out names in this webinar because I want to get honest answers. So whatever answers you put, absolutely fine. Now, I got one answer that says, I don't want to live forever necessarily, but I would love to stay youthful, healthy, and good feeling in my body as long as I choose to be here. And we've got another answer saying, I don't, which means I don't want to live forever. Then I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed in the information in this webinar, whoever you are that said that, because this webinar is going to be heavily focused on that. We will also be talking a bit about staying youthful, healthy, and good feeling. In fact, we will be talking a lot about all that stuff. And we got another person saying, I just want to get a taste of it, if it is possible. And another person saying, perhaps not forever, but for extended amounts of time to experience as many good things as possible, more lifestyles, places to visit, also to see what this earth will evolve to in time, especially after contact with alien civilizations. Wow! Wow! What an answer! Wow! Oh, yeah. So the reason I asked that question, and none of you guys really fell into this trap, or maybe you did, but you just didn't admit it. But the reason I asked this question is we assume everyone firstly wants to live forever, but they live miserable lives. So if you live a miserable life, if you hate your work, you hate your circumstances, you hate everything about where you are, what you do, why would you want to live forever? And the answer that I suspect many people have, and you guys are too good to fall into this trap, but the answers that I think most people have is they want to live forever because they're afraid of dying. That's what I personally think. So for that last answer I got, and as I said, I'm not going to give away names in this webinar because I do want some truthful answers in this webinar. That last answer was astonishingly good because it's so positive. And if you ask me, if you want to live forever, you have to have a good reason for doing so. Not wanting to die is not a good enough reason, but wanting to see what the earth evolves into, contact with whatever civilizations are out there. Fantastic reasons. Absolutely fantastic. So what I'm saying is living forever is absolutely possible. It is not a metaphorical thing we're talking about here. We're talking about living forever in your physical body for as long as you want to. and you've gone to so much trouble to project a part of you into this physical reality. Why would you not take advantage of it as much as possible? It's almost ludicrous to sort of come and have a bit of fun and then disappear again when you could have so much more fun. And so what I'm talking about again is, if you have a good enough reason to live forever, you will find a way, even if you don't apply the methods that I talk about in this webinar. You will still find a way if there's a desire that's big enough. Now then, this webinar is cutting edge, leading edge, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have to open your mind a little bit. If you are of the opinion that your lifespan is fixed, you will likely have a lot of mind opening to do. This webinar will likely challenge your beliefs. It may even, if you can embrace the idea at the end of it, completely change the way you approach your life. So if any of the ideas here challenge you, at least listen to what's being said with an open mind, if you can. And if you can't, at least store all these ideas away in your mind, and one day something may happen in your physical reality that may validate something that I say here today. And if that thing happens, then maybe you will start to appreciate the information that's being presented. In fact, if you apply the ideas here today, then the following things will happen. Firstly, your health will improve. Secondly, your relationships will improve. Thirdly, your finances will improve. There's a bit of a pattern here, isn't there? Basically, I'm trying to say every single thing in your life will improve forever. Your life will be an adventurous exploration of possibilities, not a day-by-day exhibition of emotional pain. You will feel invincible. You will feel like there is nothing you cannot do. You too will start manifesting lab webinars without knowing what on earth you're going to talk about, and you'll just flow through it. Well, okay, maybe not. But we will see. We will see, because these ideas are astonishing. This is truly cutting edge. I hope I'm not hyping this up too much, because it may well be quite disappointing to you in the end, because they are simple ideas, but they are still life-changing. So let's get on with it. Here is today's webinar structure. First of all, we are going to talk about the age game. And then we're going to jump over here and talk about the flow. And then we're going to jump round here to talk about the ultimate flowing method. Yes, I had to get the word ultimate in there. But again, like every other ultimate I have given to you, I really do believe this is ultimate. So yet again, in a Manifesting Lab webinar, we're going to have an ultimate technique. And within these sections, what we're going to do is we're going to go in this clockwise direction. So just to let you know, that's the way things are going to flow today. And I can't think of anything else to say to delay this webinar any longer. So let us jump into this exciting stuff. See how to live forever, change our lives forever, and kind of just have a good time, I hope. So let me get started. Here we go. The first one. Let's talk about the age game. Now, the age game. What is this about? This basically comes down to one idea. It's our age-old obsession with age. We as human beings have this game we play about age. It's an age labeling game. Now let me explain what I mean by that. On the screen here, we have 3 people. Now, I'm going to ask you the question, who's the oldest? Now, bear in mind that I know that you know that this is a webinar about living forever and being youthful and all that kind of stuff. So if you are thinking of answering in a kind of way that you think you've second guessed the answer that I expect you to give me, I will possibly have third guessed you so that I will have tricked you into giving me an answer that you think you were going to give me, but you wouldn't have given me if you didn't think you were going to give me it. I hope that's absolutely as clear as mud, because that's what it sounds like. Basically, just be honest. Who do you think on this screen right now, out of those 3 pictures, is the oldest person there? So have a guess. And if you're feeling really brave, you could even say the age. So here we have some answers coming in. We've got one answer saying the dude on the right. Okay. One says the guy with the eyebrow, which I guess is also the dude on the right. Another answer saying unless the one on the left is Stingray. That is an interesting point. Then the one on the right. So in other words, you're also saying the guy on the right. Got another answer saying the middle one, number 2. And a person is guessing at 45 as the ages of those people. And someone has actually spotted who the guy on the right is. Yes, it is Nick Fury. It is Nick Fury. Now, I'll explain who Nick Fury is in a moment. But I'm assuming not everybody is such a nerd as to know who at least the person on the right is. Does anyone else want to have a guess? We got most of the people going for the person on the right. Got one person going for the middle. Anyone want to volunteer an age? We've had an age of 45 for the oldest person. Anyone else want to volunteer an age? And bear in mind, I may be tricking you, or I may not be tricking you. I'll just give it another few moments. We've got 71 as the oldest. Quite a remarkable answer, that, from a nerd who knows who Nick Fury is. So 71, okay. Anyone else want to have a guess at who the oldest person on this screen is? Now, I have to say, I've chosen a lady there who's not wearing a lot of makeup on purpose. I do not believe she's wearing a lot of makeup, just so I can't be accused of sort of altering her age. We've got an answer of 57, so I'm assuming that's 57 for the oldest person there. I'm being told by a lady that she is wearing a lot of makeup. Well, she may well be wearing some, but I can tell you the other pictures I looked at, it was pretty obvious they were wearing a lot. So this is the best I could do, unfortunately. So we've got all the answers so far. I'm going to put you out of your misery here. Basically, all the people on the screen that you can see are the same age, basically. So, and what that age is, I shall write it down. It is this guy, 50. This lady, 50. This guy on the right, approximately 50. But if you're a nerd, you'll probably argue that he's 45. Now, this guy on the right I can see this is going to cause some problems, because if you don't know who this guy on the right is, you're probably totally mystified. So let me just quickly explain who the guy on the right is and why I have chosen to mystify you all. Those of you who don't know who Nick Fury is, with producing his picture. The reason I've put this guy on the right there is because he's the actor Samuel L. Jackson. And so this guy who, the nerd on our Manifesting Lab webinar who spotted Nick Fury. This is a guy in a movie that's actually showing in the cinemas at the moment called Captain Marvel. Samuel L. Jackson is quite a famous actor. He's been in quite a lot of things over the years. You may or may not have seen him. This is what he really looks like at the moment. And yes, he is 71 years old. But through the magic of technology, they have made him look about 25 years younger. Now, what is the point of showing you that? The point is that these days, you can no longer even believe a video. You can no longer believe a photo. People can be made to look however they want to look. Even with cosmetic surgery, we've reached such a point that you can appear to look whatever age you want to look. This guy, if you met him, does not look 45 to 50, but in this movie, throughout the entire movie, it's him acting, but they have used these amazing special effects so that his entire face, and he's in most of the movie, his face looks 25 years younger, and you would not believe that that was not him playing it as a younger person. That's the level of special effects we've reached in this world right now, and it's only going to get more powerful. So the reason I've put that on the screen is you basically cannot trust anything. So if anyone tells you they are a certain age and here's I can prove it, you can't trust any of it. So that kind of then makes a mockery, I guess, of the pictures I showed you earlier, because how can I trust that those people really are 50? Well, I am taking it on trust to some extent, but I have seen people, I have met people who look massively, massively younger than they really are. And these kinds of looks, the look of the person on the left, the look of the person on the middle at the age of 50, to me is not unusual. Now, if to you that feels unusual, that's because you have a belief going on. You have a belief with the age game. Now, before we go much further, I want to just ask you something, and you don't have to answer here, but how willing were you to play this game of categorizing these people? You see, for most people in this world, we want to categorize people the moment we see them. We want to label them. We want to pigeonhole them. We even do that to ourselves every time we look in the mirror. So if you were surprised by the age of these first two people, it could be that you have this categorization thing going on that you are also doing to yourself. And that will get in the way of you trying to live youthfully forever. Let me give you another little example. I want you to try another experiment here. And again, you don't have to give me any answers here. This is purely for you to just observe your own reactions to. I want you to just imagine in your mind for a moment what a 60-year-old man looks like. Just for a moment. Whatever pops into your head first. Right? Forget this is a webinar about living forever. Just whatever pops into your head, just grab it and just think about what that image represents to you. And then a 77-year-old man. Just imagine that for a moment. See what image pops into your head. And just hang on to that image. Now, let me show you what images pop into my head when I think of a 60-year-old man and a 77-year-old man. These images. Now, I don't mean men in underwear, obviously. I mean, these guys are 77. Well, you can see a bodybuilder who's 77 years old. He looks pretty good. And this guy on the right here, bodybuilder, 60 years old. I can guarantee you this is not unusual. But if you have a belief system that says that this is unusual and you were expecting some hobbling old person on a walking stick, bent over maybe because their back is bent out of shape, then I have to ask you, if that's the image that popped into your head, then that is the idea of age that you are heading towards, because that is what your belief system is telling you is normal. This is such an important point. We have belief systems that imprison us. It's a bit like with the financial webinar we had a few weeks ago. We have these belief systems and they're really, really hard to shake. If you automatically think a 77-year-old is somebody who's declining, is somebody who's gradually, their body is falling to bits, that is where you are heading. That is what your own belief system will lead you towards. So I hope you're starting to get an appreciation that this age game we play with each other, this obsession with labeling each other, this kind of demand that we conform to certain ages, this is not a healthy thing if you do want to live beyond a certain age. This idea of decline as we get older is nothing more than a belief system. So let me shake up this belief system a little bit more. You may or may not have heard of this idea that the human body replaces itself every 7 to 10 years. Possibly you have heard of it, but if you haven't, just hunt around the internet. It's everywhere. Now, I did a little bit of digging around to see how truthful this was, and I expected there to be a lot of skeptical web pages saying this is total nonsense. I'm going to prove that this is total nonsense. And to some extent there was, but it wasn't in the way that I expected it to be. What I'm about to tell you comes from presumably reputable information sources, or at least if you trust anything on the internet, it's reputable. So people were arguing that the human body does not replace itself every 7 to 10 years because it's not as clear cut as that. And what they were arguing, they were saying that white blood cells within your body live more than a year, so they need to be replaced every year. And they were arguing that red blood cells in your body live about 4 months, so they need to be replaced every 4 months or so. And they were arguing that skin cells live about 2 to 3 weeks. So, every 2 to 3 weeks, your skin kind of regenerates. And then cells in your colon, they live about every 4 days. So I was reading this stuff and thinking, hang on a second, that doesn't actually make the idea of every 7 to 10 years less powerful. It makes it more powerful, because we're basically saying that all the body cells, but this is excluding brain cells, are constantly being renewed. Isn't that interesting? It's not that our body is replacing itself every 7 to 10 years. It's continuously replacing itself. Now let me ask you a question. If your body is continuously renewing itself without you even knowing what's going on, then why should you decline? Why should you not just get fitter, healthier, happier the older you get? And I'm telling you, there is no reason other than you have accepted that society, that the beliefs around you, the beliefs you've adopted, tell you that you must decline. And I'm telling you, even from personal experience, you do not have to decline. If you challenge those beliefs, you will find they're not based upon anything, really. This idea of in your 80s, you're going to become worse. In your 90s, you're going to become worse. It's nonsense. I told a story once on Inward Quest, and it was a true story. I was working for this spiritual organization, and I used to meet lots of spiritual people. And one day I met this guy, and he was being shown around the offices, and the person who was showing him around was saying, "Guess how old he is?" And I was kind of thinking, okay, this is an awkward question to answer. It's a bit like when a guy has to answer the question to a lady, do I look fat in this? Then the only answer is run for your life. But anyway, back to the subject. Um, so, so, so the person who was showing this guy around was saying, "How old do you think he is?" And so I was staring at him, and he kind of looked at me and said, "Yeah, how old do you think I am?" And I thought that this guy who looked in his 40s, I thought he was actually, maybe he was in his 20s or 30s and he was just trying to boast a little bit. He doesn't look that old, and maybe his boast was about to backfire. So I was trying to be diplomatic. I was trying to sort of say, "Oh, you can't be more than like 30s, 40s." And I really thought he was in his 40s. And then he just looks at me and smiles, and he just says, "I'm actually in my 90s." And And I just kind of paused, and I could feel almost my jaw hitting the floor at that point. One of those occasions where your mouth just hangs open for no reason. And I was just, and that changed my view of a lot of things. When you meet somebody that completely stands outside of your belief system, that shakes things up for you. Now, with the age game, that unfortunately is very unlikely to happen, because with the age game invokes the law of attraction. If you have a belief that people are going to look like they're ready to, they can hardly walk at the age of 80, that's what you're going to attract in your life. That's the evidence you're going to see. You're not going to see 90-year-old people walking around looking like 40-year-olds. It's not going to happen. The reason that happened to me was probably I was open to it. That was a very opening, mind expanding part of my life. I was ready for any information. But if you walk around with this belief that people are going to be certain ages and they're going to behave in certain ways at certain ages, you are imprisoning yourself, and you will not allow law of attraction to bring you evidence to the contrary. So it does help us to then look into how to escape from this age game, how to free ourselves from this imprisonment. Now, I'm going to present some options to you. You might think that the options that I'm going to present are, we're going to tackle all these beliefs about age and we're going to clean them all up, and never again will we be defeated by anybody with any age other than what we sort of expect them to be, 80-year-old bodybuilders. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. These age beliefs are so pernicious. They are so intertwined with who we are and all around us all the time. It's almost worth taking a pragmatic approach. In other words, let's be realistic. Like with the financial webinar I did a few weeks ago, where I said, let's just go along with your beliefs that you have to do something to earn money because it's just the easiest way to get around so many limitations. With this age game that we play with ourselves, I'm going to suggest again, we take the realistic option that it's simply easier to just not fight those beliefs. It's easier to just not activate those beliefs. And it does seem to work. So one of the things I'm going to tell you is never discuss your real physical age with anyone. That's one of the first things. Deactivate the need to discuss your age. Now, if you are somebody that discusses ages of people quite a lot, you may have to stop those discussions, because as soon as you ask somebody how old they are, they're probably going to ask you how old you are, and then you're back into this idea of age, this age game. So following on from that, and this is going to start getting controversial here, ignore birthdays. Or at least birthdays that have a 0 on the end, because people make a big fuss about those. And try and ignore anything else that is age-based. You have all these age game beliefs going on. So this is what I've found is the most realistic way to get around it. The idea originally came from Abraham. I've been testing this for years, and it works. It's just the simplest way to step out of the age game. Ignore anything to do with age. Never talk about your age. And if somebody does come to you and demands to know your age, lie. Yes, I'm advocating lying. Terrible, terrible person that I am. But they don't really care anyway. It's like when people come up to you and say, "How are you?" They don't really want to listen to you for the next 30 minutes explaining in great detail every aspect of your life. They're just being polite. So with age as well, they don't really care if you lie about your age, so you might as well go and do it. The other reason for lying, and this is going to start becoming an issue, maybe not yet, but if you carry on implementing the ideas we're going to talk about in this webinar, it will happen. When you start to look younger than you should, and people are expecting you to look a certain way, and you do not look anything like that, you are asking for trouble. You are going to have to defend who you are. You are going to have to put up with so much nonsense. Trust me, it's just better to lie. You know, in some part of you, that you're a lot older probably than you will appear to others, but just lie about it. I've been doing it for years. In fact, I've even got myself into trouble from doing it. I've done it so often. One time I even locked myself out of my own bank account because I was talking to some individual on the phone, some bank representative who wanted to prove who I was, and one of the questions they asked me was how old you are. And I honestly didn't know. I could tell them my birth date, but I couldn't tell them my age, and that they just would not believe that somebody does not know how old they really are, and so I couldn't get into my account. So those sorts of things may happen, but they happen very rarely. There is surprisingly little kickback from just lying about your age, never talking about age. But the great advantage of doing this is you step out of the age game. You deactivate those beliefs that are sending you towards the image that you have. So the age game, it's the first step to living forever. You must step out of all this categorization that goes on. It will get to you otherwise. So you're not going to find me telling you how old I am, but it's probably older, possibly older than you think, but I don't look that. And I'm not even going to tell you how old I look, but I promise you this stuff is real. When you start looking younger than you should, you are going to open up a can of worms if you tell people how old you really are. And if you're ready for that, good luck to you. But I want a quiet life, so I do not get involved. Let's move on then in this webinar. We've spoken about the age game. Let's move on to the next bit. So the age game was about deactivating these beliefs that are going to allow the next stuff to work. And the next stuff that I'm going to talk about is the flow.